Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Jesus replied, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." And that comes from Matthew 17, verse 20 to 21. Well, the background story for this is Jesus, our way shower and master teacher, sent his disciples out to teach and to heal. And there was one man who brought his son who was possessed by a demon, and the disciples couldn't heal him. So the man brings his son to Jesus, and right away, he's healed. And so later on, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, "Well, why couldn't we do that?" And Jesus told them that their faith was too little. So I grew up on Long Island in the suburbs of New York City, and it was flat, much like Miami here. When I was a child, our family went up north to the Adirondack Mountains on Lake George, Silver Bay, for a family vacation. And I saw those mountains coming up out of the lake. I was awestruck, 8, 9 years old. It was like, oh my goodness. And I thought God lived on those mountains. I really did. And I look forward every year to going back. But so you can imagine that when I heard that passage about faith moving mountains, the image that came to my mind was, there's no amount of faith that I could have that could physically move that mountain from one place to the other. But as I matured in my faith, I realized that the mountains that Jesus was talking about wasn't necessarily a physical mountain, but it was a metaphor for the struggles, the mountains that we might have in our life, or even the struggles and the mountains we might have in our thoughts and our consciousness. So you heard that Unity's World Day of Prayer is coming up this week, and Reverend Pam told you all the good ways to connect with it. I wanted to share with you the affirmation of Unity's World Day of Prayer, and it is, "Fueled by faith, I can move mountains." I'm going to say that again. Fueled by faith, I can move mountains. Well, what is mountain-moving faith, you might ask? Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, defined faith in the Revealing Word as the perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape substance. So, meaning it happens in our mind, our faith. And he says that faith is a deep inner knowing that that which is sought is already ours for the taking. Again, we're affirming what we desire in our lives. So today we're going to look at what are the mountains in our lives, why would we want to move them, and how can we use our faith to move the mountains in our life. Well, we can right off the bat think of challenges. Everybody's got them. They're part of the human condition. And if you don't have one now, stick around. You'll probably get one. Whether it's financial or job-related or relationship-related, health-related, there's always something going on in our lives. My recent mountain story evolved around my needing to find a place to live. I was in ministerial school here, and at Unity on the Bay, I was doing my internship, and I needed to leave my relationship and find a place to live. And I looked and looked and couldn't find a place, and, did the prayer for that, and got the guidance to take an Airbnb in the meanwhile. And in the meanwhile, I kept praying because I was to do a chaplaincy unit at Jackson as well, and I needed to be in Miami to do that. So before the Airbnb was done, a place opened up in the building that I used to live in with people that I loved and a location that I loved, and it was the mountain. The mountain got moved, and here I am. So as I was preparing for this talk, I came across the saying, maybe you've been assigned this mountain to show others it can be moved. Okay, so I began to think about that, and I started to think about all the stories of the people that we've heard about through our biblical stories and through our current times, you know, and you think about Moses praying and raise his staff and the Red Sea parts, and the Israelites walk across and the sea falls down on the Egyptians who were chasing them. And Jesus praying and walking on water to greet his disciples. And in the current day, you can imagine our heroes, and I think everyone probably has one or two role models or heroes that they would like to emulate or are emulating, actually, even in their life right now. You know, I think of Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and Amelia Earhart and Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is one of my favorite ones. And they serve as role models for us, and they give us courage, I believe, and faith to move us through our lives and our struggles. You know, they didn't get where they are by sitting on the couch eating bonbons. So it's important, I think, to acknowledge the mountains that we have in our life. We don't ignore them or spiritually bypass them or say everything is good when the roof is coming down on us, so to speak. We acknowledge that. And so, yes, we do have mountains in our lives. And I think that the mountains represent what we don't want in this context. And our goals and our dreams represent what we do. And so we're able to see the possibilities of what we want in our lives through our prayer and meditation practices, you know, our faith to move those mountains. And so then it becomes, well, why would we want to? Well, right off the bat, I can think of a few reasons, like we're happier and more peaceful and have a more joyful and fun-filled life. But how do we get to that place? Confucius says, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. So in other words, any big endeavor, a person or a society, begins with many, many small steps. And we are taught here in Unity that we are 100% human and 100% divine. So in moving our mountains, we can begin to access that divinity, that divine nature within us to help us become more peaceful, more joy-filled. I think of it as having the right tools for the job, you know? I don't know if any of you have undertaken certain projects at home or whatnot, and maybe you don't have the right tools, and you call somebody up, and boy, they're right there with the tools. And the job gets done. I think of it for me, you know, like I'm a gardener, and I have my little garden shovel. I love my garden shovel. And I could go to the mountain with my garden shovel. And it might take a very long time to move that mountain. That's my human side, right? That's my human. But I could take a backhoe and some sticks of dynamite and blast the side of that mountain and take my backhoe and clear it away and let the road go through. And that's my divinity. And that's the power and the strength that we have when we partner with God. Amen. So one of our beloved prayer teachers, the Reverend Linda Martella-Whitsett, who's written books, and I have one of her books here, which I'll refer to in a bit. She's the former director of the Silent Unity Prayer Ministry, and a wonderful human being. She tells a story quite openly about her estrangement from her father and that process of reconciliation. That was her mountain, that estrangement and disownment even. She says that through her prayer and meditation, she healed her thoughts, her mental images, and her emotions regarding her father. And this is interesting what she says, because she says that the circumstances in the outer shifted because she changed the circumstances within her. She released, she let go, she forgave, and she kept her heart open and was so joy-filled the day the phone rang and it was her father on the phone. The mountain moved. So her story and others are an inspiration to us. You know, our relationships often don't go so easily, and we know that there is healing in them. The other thing is that when we have moved along, when we have healed, when we have overcome a mountain in our lives, we can then be an example for someone else. We can be that comforting, healing presence for someone else. And then we are the people that are inspiring other people. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, says, keep on praying for faith. It's through prayer that you develop all your wonderful qualities of soul. So how can we move the mountains in our life? One way is through our personal prayer practice. We can also pray with our prayer chaplains. We can call Silent Unity and request prayer. And there's also an opportunity, as Rev Pam mentioned, to submit prayer requests online for the World Day of Prayer. Charles Fillmore defined prayer as the most highly accelerated mind action known. Again, what we're thinking about in prayer accelerates what will come in the outside world. He goes on to say, prayer is more than supplication. It's an affirmation of truth that eternally exists, but has not yet come into consciousness. It comes into consciousness not by supplication, but by affirmation. So in Mark 11, verse 24, Jesus is quoted as saying, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Well, the prayer chaplains here and our Unity University students have been learning an updated affirmative prayer model that I'd like to share with you. It's described in this book, Discover Your Divinity, so what I'm going to say now is all in here, and we have copies in the back in the pop-up bookstore. So this is the basic outline of the prayer flow, and I've listened. We had Reverend Linda here for our prayer chaplain training, and online we had Reverend Deanne Weir-Morrissey, the co-author with Linda on this book, talk to us and describe their feeling of the prayer. And they say it starts out like a frond. I open. And so I open to a new possibility, centering myself and willing to open to something new, a shift in my consciousness or understanding. And we do that here. We breathe into our space and into our prayer, and we start by opening us up to that guidance. And we recognize that God is, From the vastness that God is, we focus our attention on a specific aspect of God, a specific characteristic, principle, love, wisdom, faith, abundance. And we know that because God is, I am created in the likeness and image of God, and so therefore I am also faith, love, wisdom, and abundance. So then when I know that, I can use those attributes, those powers of God within my own life. If I don't know what to do, I can call on my inner wisdom that's my connection with God, my inner wisdom to guide me and lead me into the next right action, the next right thing to do, and then I appreciate the shift in consciousness. So I'll say them again. I open to a new possibility. I recognize God is. I integrate, I am. I realize that I can, I have, I know, and I appreciate the shift in consciousness. The authors also tell us, just so that you don't get scared, there's no wrong way to pray. Just pray. Myrtle Fillmore, Unity co-founder, had a mountain to move concerning her health. She was sickly, diagnosed with tuberculosis, and wasn't expected to live. She attended a lecture by E.B. Weeks and came away learning that she was a child of God and did not inherit sickness. So from that point on, she began a practice of prayer and meditation, sending love and healing energy and blessing to every area, every cell of her body, and also apologizing for thinking ill of it in the past. As she healed, she taught others to heal, including her husband, Charles, and the Unity movement was begun. So regarding prayer, Myrtle said, sometimes we pray to a God outside ourselves, but it's the God in the midst of us that frees and heals. She describes both ways of praying and connecting to God as she replied to those who wrote into Silent Unity for prayer. She says, sometimes I've written a letter to God when I've wanted to be sure that something would have divine consideration and attention. And in another response, she writes, prayers aren't sent out at all. Sometimes that's our trouble. Where would we be sending them to? As individuals, we should direct them to our own mind and heart and affairs. So as it turns out, prayer ultimately results in a change in our consciousness. That change opens up a new perspective and a new way of perceiving a situation and an action that we can take. So yes, fueled by faith, we can move mountains. So in conclusion, this is my cue to the people. Here they come. In conclusion, we are on a journey of self-discovery, of how to use our divine self. Take that in for a minute. We're all on a path. We're here in our human skin and our human self, and we're really discovering how to use our divine self. I mean, we could stay stuck in our humanness with our little shovel trying to move, or we can learn and grow into our divinity, into our divine self. The mountains that are in our life arise out of our human condition, and we can move them by accessing the divine within us. We want to move the mountains to have more joy-filled, happy, peaceful, abundant lives. And we can move and transform the mountains by means of our prayer and meditation practice And then, using our faith, take action on the guidance that we receive. The mountains in our life can be moved by faith. So my invitation for you for growth work this week is to identify a mountain in your life and use faith to move it. As we deepen our prayer practice, the mountains will soon appear as molehills and then vanish, leaving in their place a sense of happiness and peace. And so it is. Amen.